So we are, some of you won't know about us, we're a registered charity in Australia now, registered about 8 weeks ago, and our mission is to educate the worldwide community about the harmful effects of pornography, porn addiction and sex addiction, and connect those who are addicted to professional help. So that's kind of guilty pleasure in a nutshell. That's what we're aiming to do. And this is a... Oh, they're good. And what we're doing short term is we're producing a documentary, a sermon series, a set of interactive books and a website to help people connect to help. Okay, and so we're raising the awareness of the issues around pornography and then connecting people to help. And we'll be doing that through all of those. Here's some quotes for you from someone who's in our documentary, who you would have seen in the video. And I just wanted to present these to you, just to kind of pave the way for tonight and why we're actually here. You know, there are no studies and no data that indicate a benefit from porn use. The society is awash in porn, and so far, in fact, that the data is in, if porn made us healthy, we'd be healthy by now. So I think that sits pretty good with us. Judith Reisman, who's heard of Judith Reisman? Some people, a couple of people. Porn triggers a myriad of internal natural drugs that mimic the high from a street drug. Addiction to porn is addiction to what I dub neurotoxins, mind-altering drugs produced by the viewer's own brain. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later on, and this is something we'll be covering in our documentary. Josh McDowell, who's heard of Josh McDowell? In May this year, he said this: the greatest threat to the cause of Christ is pervasive sexuality and pornography. The downfall of the church will not come from a lack of apologetic teaching, it will come from disintegration of the families in the church. And so he's raised the red flag on this issue. And that's kind of what we're here doing tonight. We've brought Donny to Australia because the things that we're producing won't be released until mid-2014. We're filming our documentary next year. I'll give you a bit more of information about that later on. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to get people talking about this issue now. We wanted to start raising some of the concerns around it and start educating people about the problem and giving you a little bit of perspective from... I'm a former addict, and so I can give you perspective from the addict sides, but Donny, who's with us tonight, can give us incredible insight as to what goes on from the other side of the camera. And Donny, do you want to come up? And tonight Donny's going to present his story. He's a pastor's son. He produced pornography while he was at church. He produced for 9 years. Was it 3 years you produced porn for while you're at church, or something like that? And he's going to give us amazing perspective on the other side, as I said before. As Donny talks, we have a number here, and Donny will keep flicking this slide up for you. Any questions that you have, SMS them through to us. Right at the end of tonight, we're going to have a panel of 5 people up here. So myself, Dr. Alan Meyer, who'll be here soon, Donny, and 2 counsellors, a male and female counsellor, and we're here to answer your questions. So while Donny's talking, if you think of anything that you want to ask, ping us an SMS and we'll try and get to those questions at the end of the night. So I'm going to hand over to you, Donny.
Thank you. All right, so I've been here. This is my first trip ever to Australia. Things are a little different here. You guys talk really funny. You pronounce words incorrectly. Melbourne. Okay, do you guys watch the Jason Bunn series? The Bunn Identity, the Bunn Supremacy? No, you watch the Jason Bourne series. Mel Bourne, it's spelled the same. Yeah, anyway. I do like Vegemite, though. I tried it. That was good stuff. And I really like AFL as well. Because, I mean, it's pretty interesting, to score a goal, you have to kick the ball through a set of, sticks, and just in case you missed, there's another set for you to kick it through. That's not at all like training wheels. Not at all. No. Actually, to be honest, a guy from Queensland told me to say that. But, yeah, I met Zach Smith from the Gold Coast Sun, so I'd have to say that since I had dinner with him and know pretty much nothing about AFL, then the Go Suns. I mean, that's my team, I guess. So, all right, enough about that. as was stated, I was the son of a pastor, and I grew up in a very legalistic church where God seemed to me to be a list of rules, regulations, things I couldn't do, always seemed to be wanting to send me to hell for some reason or another. Was the reason that what I'm wearing right now is not quite swim attire because my sleeves need to be long. Girls had to swim in dresses at different times than boys. If you drove a two-tone car, you were showing off, so that's sinful too. If you had more than just one solid paint job. All of these things were supposedly things that made you holy. Your actions made you holy. And it seemed to me to be so hypocritical because on the weekends, I'd see these people in my father's churches and see how great they pretended to be. And during the rest of the week, I would see and hear from my parents what their lives were really like. They'd be talking amongst each other, and my brother and I would be within hearing distance. And I just thought, if this is Jesus, if this is Christianity, I don't want anything to do with it. And I carried that into my teen years especially. And the anger and bitterness that built up was just really intense. To say that I hated Christians would kind of be not good enough because the word hatred's not powerful enough. I started really despising them because it felt to me like everything I'd always been taught was just a lie. And my senior year of high school, however, with the last year of secondary school, I moved in with my aunt in another city so that I could take an advanced math class that wasn't offered in the small town my dad pastored in at the time. And that year I met a woman, a girl, named Wendy, and she was raised a little different than me. She lived her faith. She knew a Jesus that you had a relationship with, and I still didn't quite understand what that meant. For her sake, however, I tried. We dated for 4 years, and when we were married, then on our wedding night, she was still a virgin. And that has nothing to do with me, because I tried to change that all through the relationship, but she was having none of it. And so we get married. She's following her faith and believing God, and made these decisions and thought that she'd married a godly man. And I'm going to breakfasts with men and prayer meetings with men. And in the meantime, however, a computer had entered our house, and I started looking at pornography on the internet when she would be asleep or at work. And I started being consumed by it to the place where sometimes I would arrive late at work, and it just would disrupt my life, and I'd stay up far too late rather than going to bed with my wife. And I decided that this is an amazingly attractive content. I want to be part of producing it. I think I can make a lot of money with this. But I knew my wife really wouldn't approve of that, of course. And so what I did is I created a technology consulting business. I called it Pauling Technology Consulting. She didn't ask many questions because computers and networking weren't really something that held interest for her. She didn't understand that sort of thing, and I knew it. That's why I created it. So for the next 3 years, I deceived my wife. And I became the hypocrite that I'd always despised, because I'm going to church now pretending to be something I'm not. I actually didn't realize that, though, until I was speaking on a stage after getting out. And right in the middle of it, it hit me. You were that hypocrite too. Because, see, I'd always confused God with the people claiming to represent Him. We often do that, especially as teens. We look up to people rather than God. So I was confusing God and the people that claimed to represent Him, and that was the root of my anger and bitterness. But 2 years into producing porn, I'd always told myself right from the beginning that I was not going to cheat on my wife. I was going to keep it professional. 2 years into it, I cheated the first time, and I felt horrible. She didn't deserve it. She's an amazing woman. I can't say enough good about her. And I promised myself then, if I ever do this again, I'm going to come clean with my wife. So a year later, when I did it again, I kept the promise I'd made to myself. I wasn't very good at keeping the promises I'd made to my wife, obviously. But I kept that promise, and I called her from a convention in Phoenix, Arizona, and I told her what I was doing for a living. I didn't even get to the cheating part. when I got home from that convention, I was sleeping on the floor of my office. And Wendy told me that if I went to counseling, our marriage still had a chance. But at this point, I'm so full of rage and anger and bitterness that I didn't want to. I just said, no, I'm going to run with this. We had a 1-year-old son at the time. Now, imagine how this would feel, ladies. You marry this guy, now all of a sudden you have no idea who he is. You know, nothing's true. What from our relationship was true? Who is this guy? And on top of it, all this pain that you're going through, you have a 1-year-old son, and this guy has visitation rights, and he gets your son every other weekend. And being the coward that I am, I couldn't stay single, so I quickly found another girlfriend. She was 8 years younger than me, and she was raised in what I call porn generation. That's age 30 and younger, where the kids sit around and watch porn with their parents. Now, that might sound like a shocking statement, but think about it. These programs that we watch on TV, they keep their clothes on, but we really know what's going on, don't we? And we're laughing about it, while at the same time telling our kids that this behavior is wrong. But kids don't remember your words, they remember how they felt. So it makes it really easy when they reach college age for a guy like me to convince them that being involved in porn is okay. That's what we do when we watch these programs like 2.5 Men and the like. And then we laugh at what's going on there. And the kids are saying, yeah, I'm hearing one thing in church and Sunday school, but me and my parents are having a good time laughing at this. So Belinda had no problem with being involved in porn. She was okay with it. And the very first month that we didn't have to hide what we were doing anymore, I grossed $50,350 and I was never going back again. And before I go on too deep into the story, I want to read you a letter. Because see, I travel all over the world now. And I speak on this topic. And my goal is not to tell people what to do. We're all people who are children of God, given free will by Him. We get to make our own decisions. And rather than me preaching at you and telling you how you should feel about this issue, I'd rather you make up your own mind. I just want to give you some more information to consider. But Wendy and I have resumed a friendship of sorts. Some days she likes me. Some days she seems to hate the fact that I exist. But who can blame her after what I put her through? But when I travel and speak, I can identify with the men who struggle, because I was one of those. I can identify with a woman or a man who's been involved in the business, because I recruited a whole lot of those people. But what I have a hard time identifying with are the women who come to me and they say things like, my husband's addiction is stripping away all that I am. Or they'll say, well, sometimes it seems like wives are a lost casualty in this war. I don't know how to deal with that. Because when I was married to Wendy, I always thought that, you know, there's no big deal about porn. And if Wendy didn't like it, that's her problem. Why should it be a big deal? So when a woman sent me an email that said those two things I just mentioned, I forwarded it to Wendy to get her input. And I'm going to read her letter because it sets the tone for what porn is. She says, Donny, you don't understand. It hurts so much just to read this letter, and all I feel like I could give her is to say, run, run, run. Run away, far away. It's adultery in the most painful form. It's ongoing because it's not a, quote, real affair, so it's like trying to work through a marriage one-sided. While he's having this continual affair, you're trying to work through it. How is that fair? Tell me, how is that okay? How can I try to give women tools to work through this? How can I tell them to try to rebuild something with someone who is not doing their part? It is so one-sided, and all I would want to tell these women is to leave. And that isn't right. God needs to deal with each situation on an individual basis, and they need to hear from Him what they're supposed to do. But how can their marriage survive? To me, it can't. If He doesn't quit, it will tear them apart. How come this should be her burden? That's what I wonder. The very thing he's stabbing her heart with and tearing their family apart with and their children or whomever is the very thing she's supposed to help him through? As, quote, Christians, is that what we're supposed to do? Stand by his side and be a faithful warrior on his behalf when he's so selfish that he would sacrifice his wife and children for photographs and fantasy? I truly don't even know. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Her statement where she says, my husband's addiction is stripping away all that I am, and goes on to say that it seems like wives are a lost casualty in this war. Those kill me because I know. For me, divorcing you and getting out of all of it was freedom. I didn't have to continue being torn apart. I could get strong and rebuild my life. But when you're in it, your heart is ripped to shreds over and over and over again. I don't know how to counsel someone who's going through that. I'm angry, and I have no understanding for this level of selfishness. Who knows? Maybe if wives left their husbands, men would see reality. The reality of the fact is that it is an affair, and their wives shouldn't have to put up with the abuse, just like they wouldn't have to put up with it if he was physically abusing them. How is this different? Emotional wounds hurt more than physical wounds. Let him have his porn because it's obviously what he wants, and he can't have both. I just don't have answers at this point. Read in the Old Testament when Israel was unfaithful to God to see if you get any insight. Wendy. She lets us have it, doesn't she? But she's absolutely right. Pornography is an affair. You are making a sexual bond with an image on screen. You know, God wired sex to be something mysterious and magical that bonds two people together, and he knows what he's talking about. So even if you're making a bond with an image on screen, that's still an affair. Wendy's absolutely right. But I didn't see it that way when I was in the business. Especially not at the beginning. See, when Belinda and I no longer had to, when I didn't have to hide what I was doing anymore, and I was just open about it, I would tell everybody. I didn't care who knew. We'd be spending our money because we were really lazy. We'd take the first half of the month and make money in the second half of the month and just blow it. Because porn's never going away, so saving something we can do later. Let's have a good time now. Let's party. I think I just lost a connection. No, there it is. So that's exactly what we did. We would party, we would live this lifestyle, we'd go on holiday all the time. And what would happen, though, is eventually the people who were paying for our trip, these girls that I recruited, more than 500 in the 9 years I was in the business, not one of which ever came back and thanked me for getting them involved in porn, by the way. They would start calling me up, and they would be saying things like, Donny, please can we remove this content from the internet? Today my dad left his office building. He and a group of friends were going to go out and have a beer together. And when they got to his car, it was covered with images of me. He is so ashamed of me right now. He doesn't want to talk to me anymore. I've always been a daddy's girl. Can we please just take this stuff down? And no, I can't. I have no control over that after it's out there. And then there'd be girls who they'd say, you know, I arrived at my college campus today, at my university campus, and there were images covering the trees of me. And the guys are now groping me and saying things to me and treating me in a way that's just not feeling very good. Can we please get rid of this stuff? We had a girl named Mindy, that's her real name, and I knew she'd do well. So I created a website of her, shared 25% of the profits with her. She didn't know how to handle that kind of money at 18 years old. So she'd go out and party too. And when she's passed out at parties, guys would take what they wanted. She has a child with no idea who the father is. These sorts of things happened all the time. Girls would go to university, get their 4-year degree, and then not be able to use it because of a few days working for me. It violated the morality clause of every company out there. A girl wanted to be a police officer her entire life, and halfway through the academy they came and told her that she was being released because they found out the work that she did for me over the course of a few days. And you know who these girls are? They're your daughters. They're someone's future mother. They're someone's future grandmother. These aren't broken people. These are everyday children that you raise, that go on because of the society that we live in that makes porn glamorous. It's easy for a guy like me to show them a lifestyle and they buy into it because they think porn's okay. And they don't see the long-term consequences. They'd come into my house and they'd see this lifestyle I live, and they'd see photos on the wall of me with people that they'd seen on TV. And they'd see me in exotic places. and they'd start painting themselves into that picture and thinking that pornography could give it to them. And then I'd take it away from them, and I'd say, this isn't for you. Well, what's going to happen when your dad finds out? Well, my dad doesn't look at porn. Well, what about your uncle? Well, if he saw me, he would no way tell my dad. He would never admit to my dad that he's looking at this stuff. All right, that's good enough for me. Sign this 5-page model release. I've warned you. Come on in. And then we'd get them addicted to that money, because they could work at Starbucks and bring home $200 every few weeks. Or they could work for someone like me and start at $500 a day. So it was easy in the society we live in to recruit. And then you literally watch the lights go out in their eyes. These big bright eyes become dim as their soul dies. And they go harder and harder down the path because they have to do more and more to keep making the money. See, when people ask me if I think that this is an attractive topic, if I think that this is an attractive subject matter, if I'm still attracted to porn, I say, what is attractive about a girl being curled up in a ball in the corner, sucking her thumb because her mind's so blown by what she just did to herself that she doesn't know how to handle it? What is attractive about the fact that some of these girls would rather be screaming in agony than moaning in pleasure, but they know that, like any movie, you have to do take after take after take before you get it right, and if you don't get it right, you have to come back tomorrow before you get paid. We see the finished product and we think it's just great. It doesn't matter if it's user-submitted content. User-submitted, yeah, right. Like the porn companies are just going to let people take over their market share. Most of that's seeded by them. I created a lot of that myself. You know, it doesn't matter what our excuse is. I only look at this kind. I only look at that kind. I only look at Playboy, which, by the way, I worked for 18 months. I created content for them. I recruited for them. They own some of the most hardcore porn sites on the internet. They wouldn't still be in business if they were just a softcore magazine. It doesn't matter if you say, well, I only look at free sites. I'm not contributing to this. Well, think about it. Google's free to the end user, yet they're one of the most profitable companies on the planet. I used to advertise on one of those sites. I had a network of websites that had 12 million visitors a month coming to them. And the first 15 text links on this free site, just a text link, was $2,000 a day. They make an incredible amount of profit. Why am I saying all this stuff to you? Here's why. When my father was pastoring his church, all those people that I hated, I would run into from time to time. And I lived for the moment when I did. Because we'd have that catch-up conversation. You haven't seen each other for a while, so you ask what you're doing for a living, and if they didn't ask me, I would ask them first, because it's only polite to ask in return. So, Donny, what are you doing for a living? Well, I'm a porn producer. And they'd start to snicker, yeah, right. No, seriously, I'm a porn producer. And I'd start to see their face go red, and they would build up this anger that they just want to, let me have it. And I'd say, okay, I know you want to say something to me, and I'm going to let you. But before you do, I want to ask you a question, and I really don't want to hear your response, because I don't want to hear you lie to me. Have you ever looked at this stuff? Because the law of supply and demand tells us that without you out there creating the demand, a guy like me couldn't be making money producing the supply. So thank you for the business. What was it that you wanted to say to me? And what can you say? Because you know what, Christians? The fact is this. Some of my fellow friends who owned porn sites would purposefully buy Christian email lists because Christians click through at a higher percentage than any other group and purchase. The stats that you saw on the screen where it says 50% admit that it's a problem in their life, that's the ones that admit that it's a problem. When we take anonymous surveys and we ask questions and the people think that there's no way that they're ever going to be found out and they can answer anonymously, the stats show us that 90% of Christian men, 70% of Christian women, and 50% of pastors admit that they've looked at this in the last 30 days. This is something that's tearing the church apart. And you know why that is? Because the Bible tells us that what we keep in secret, what we keep in the dark, becomes a big issue. But when we expose light on it, it takes away the power. Yet so many churches are afraid of talking about this topic because they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. They're afraid that they're going to be looked down on like they're a pervert. They're afraid that maybe they're the only one that's dealing with this, that everybody else is holy. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. I absolutely love to meet Christians and point out this hypocrisy when I was in the business. It really fueled that bitterness for me. I want to read to you a letter before I go on to make this a little bit lighter of a story. Take away this dark part and tell you a little bit of hope. But this is an email that I received from a girl who had worked for me when I was in the business. And she writes it to me after I was out. And all she had done was what I call softcore pornography, which means that she acted alone. There was no one else touching her. And she sends me this email. And she says, "Hey, Donny, I have a huge problem. I'm getting married in a month, and my fiancé found my pictures on the internet. He is beside himself. He is hurt and shocked, and being that we're supposed to tie the knot in a month, I'm fricking suicidal, fricking sick over this, throwing up, cannot sleep at all. I never thought in a million years that would ever happen. How long do those pictures circulate? I know I did these pics, and yes, it was my fault, but I want to get them off the internet. Is there any way possible to do that ASAP? I will pay you the money back, whatever it takes. This will and is ruining my life. I am fearful that his friends will see and torture him about it, or the people I work with in the military who are all men. I am absolutely sick over this. I can't eat or sleep, and I honestly don't know what to do. I swear to you, I never thought this would happen. I mean, there are a million girls on the internet. Why me? And because you're supposed to be a changed man into God and everything, please, I need to know that you understand my situation and find it in your heart to help me. This is destroying me. I know I'm 100% responsible for taking the pics. It's my fault, but it was a long time ago, and I was single, and I needed the money. But isn't there anything you can do to please help me now? This was like 2 or 3 years ago. Why are my pics still on the damn internet? My military career and soon-to-be marriage, if he still will, is writing on this. Don't my pictures expire after a certain time, and you just put new ones up, or you sell new ones to companies to flush out old girls? I think you can read the desperation in this email. I am completely desperate at this point, Donny, and I need your help. Can you please help me? Please, I need everything removed. What can we do? I'll pay you money, anything. Please say you can help me. Please. And I can't. Because long after she's a grandmother, those pictures are still going to be around somewhere on the internet. If these porn companies took away every bit of content from every person who regretted what they had done, we wouldn't have anything left to look at in the realm of pornography. Because as I said before, out of the 500 girls that I recruited, never has one come back and said thank you. All of them. I've tried to reach out to many of them and apologize and tell them I'm sorry for what I did. I'm trying to tell people what it's like. I'm trying to redeem this. You know, I know I'm forgiven. God gives us a big gift. It's called grace. And when we can't forgive ourselves, it's like we give him that gift back and we say, your gift's not good enough. So I do accept his forgiveness. But I also try to reach out and apologize. And some of these girls will say, I don't want to talk to you. After working for you, I wanted to commit suicide. Others will say, thank you. That really means a lot to me. That's really healing. I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing. Others have actually come to Christ because of it. But I want to point out to you yet again that these are somebody's daughters. Would you sign your own daughter up to get involved in this, or your own wife? Then why is it okay to look at when it's someone else's daughter? These are all girls that are children of the king. That makes them literally princesses, and we don't treat princesses like this. It's not okay. What changed me? Well, I'll tell you. Every year in Las Vegas, Nevada, there is a porn convention where they give out awards. And you're just going to change it for me? And what happens at this convention is it's like the awards that we get for movies. You get a trophy for the best this, the best that, the best this scene. You did that the best. There's even one for Jenna Jameson. Oh, let's go back. No, go ahead and leave it there. And every year I would go to this convention, past the people who are holding their picket signs telling us that we're going to burn in hell, how horrible that's going to be, screaming at us as if that's going to result in us falling to our knees and begging Jesus for forgiveness. Scream a little bit louder, I'm almost convinced. Why do we think that's going to work? I don't know. It's ridiculous. All it would do is make me give them a one-finger salute, keep on walking by, yelling at them back, mumbling to my friends about how hypocritical it is for these people who are biggest subscribers to be telling me that I'm going to burn in hell. And it would just fuel that anger and bitterness even more. And so what happened was I get to the porn convention one year, and I go through the doors, and I see this simple booth, and it's black with white letters, and it says xxxchurch.com, the #1 Christian porn site. And I thought, this is amazing. This is absolutely incredible, because I'm picturing a group of people who are filming pornography in church. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. I want to get involved with these people. In fact, I'll give them a discount. So I go over there, and I find out that instead of it being a group of people who is trying to, film porn in church and disrespect Christianity, it's actually 2 youth pastors who are just really tired of what's happening to their youth group. And so they decided to do something about it, and they go to the porn convention. They didn't know what they're going to do there. And their wives went with them, because their wives weren't stupid enough to let their husbands go to a porn convention alone. And I see this Rex the Rabbit character walking around, this person dressed up as a rabbit. It turns out that's one of the wives, because she didn't want her face seen. And they stole Rex the Rabbit from their children's ministry. And I'm told that when they got back, the children's ministry didn't want Rex back. But over the years, I saw this group do some crazy things. I didn't have a picture that first year, but you saw the picture already the second year. They have a simple booth, and it says, Jesus loves porn stars. And they have stacks of Bibles. There's 5,000 Bibles that they bring every time, and they always run out. And here's what those Bibles look like. And on the front, imagine how hard it is to get this Bible printed. Jesus loves porn stars on the Bible. And on the back it says, does Jesus really love porn stars? It says, yes, he loves porn stars as much as he loves pastors, soccer moms, liars, thieves, and prostitutes. We're all the same to Jesus. We're just people who need him to save us from the mess we've made of our lives. And what you hold in your hand right now, we think can really help you do that. And they were doing other crazy things like this. Now what's happening here is that girl having her makeup done will soon not be wearing much of anything, and she'll be walking around being groped by men, putting products in their big huge bags that they bring, which I don't know what they think they're going to do with this big bag of porn when they get back on the plane, but that's a whole other story. In the meantime, girls like this walk around filling it with product. And instead of telling her that she's a harlot and she's going to go burn in hell, they're saying, you are beautiful. God loves you so much. There is nothing that you could ever do that would change the fact that he loves you so much. We want to help you. We think he has more for you than this. If you'd like an escape from all the men groping you, we have women in the bathrooms waiting to talk to you. If not, that's okay. But just know, there's nothing you could do that changes the fact that God loves you. And I'd see them do some amazing things like that. They'd go into the brothels of Nevada, where prostitution is legal, and not into the areas where the women work, but into the places where they stay when they're off work. And they do crazy things like remodeling their living quarters and paint loved on the walls and embroider loved in the sheets and blankets. Because you know what they were doing? They were being Jesus in skin. They believed that a human can't do anything. A human cannot yell at someone and try to scare them into salvation. But if you show the love of Jesus, that love will change somebody and change their life. And they'd go into strip clubs, into the areas where the girls are backstage getting ready, and they'd give them roses and bottles of water and tell them that they're beautiful and that God loves them. And they were invited back by the people who own these places. In fact, sometimes when they'd leave the brothels, they would have the owners come out and say, hey, you should take so-and-so with you because she's really not cut out for this work. They were constantly invited back. In fact, at the porn conventions, they were offered a discount for being a nonprofit. Christian discount at a porn show. And it was amazing. And over the course of 4 years, they tore down my hatred and bitterness. Because I'd see them at these shows and I'd think, wow, that's amazing. If I was a Christian, that's the kind of Christian I'd want to be. The people I was raised around would never be in the same room as this girl. In fact, if they were there in their stuffy outfits after church and this girl walked in to have dinner, they'd probably leave the restaurant. But what an amazing group this is. They can't be real. So I would love them at these shows, and then when we'd get home from the shows, I'd go on their website, and I'd be like so full of anger and bitterness, and I'd tell them about how there's no God, and how they're a bunch of hypocrites, and I'd post links to my porn sites, because I wanted that Christian traffic. And they would ban me from their site, because of the porn links. They'd say, if you stop doing that, you can come back. They even had me on their podcast. You know why? Because they were including me instead of excluding me. They were trying to reach down into the gutter that I lived in and pull me out. And they thought that love was the way to do that. And the harshest words I ever heard from them was an email every now and then that says, Donny, you know what you're doing is wrong. You know God has more for you than this. You know there's a God. What are you doing in Vegas? You want to have dinner? Amazing. And once that hatred was gone, I could no longer justify what I was doing for a living. So the end came for me on a day in September of 2006, and I'm sitting in Playboy's offices, and they offer me an additional $4,000 a day to do a new series that they wanted filmed, a lesbian reality series, and they thought the girls I recruited were perfect for it. And I asked them, how often can I produce? And they said, as much as you want, 7 days a week. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm fat and lazy, and I want to spend my money. But that's amazing that I can. On top of the $500,000 that I'm already making, I can make another $4,000 a day. And that day when I left the office, see, I'd started praying every now and then and challenging God to show me that He was real. And that day when I left the offices of Playboy, I'm traveling along the interstate, and I says, God, it doesn't seem to matter what I do, you want to bless me. All full of ego when I said this. Basically saying, God, thank you for the new porn contract. And that was the wrong thing to do. Because I know this sounds really, really weird, but I'm just telling you what happened. Right after I prayed that prayer, just moments after I prayed it, it felt like I was electrocuted. The air left my body. I pull over to the side of the road, my hands are shaking, and I can't drive my car anymore. And I knew that God had just touched me. And it wasn't like He was telling me, you're going to burn in hell for that comment. He was saying, you've been challenging me to show you that I'm real. You've got it. I have a whole lot more for you than this. It's time to make a choice. You're going to go deeper into this business, or you're going to get out. And I instantly no longer wanted to produce porn. I'd just been touched by God. How does porn compare to that? And so I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is great. But I didn't instantly surrender my life to God. I instead gave Him a checklist. Well, God, you know, if you'll do this, 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 and this, and you answer this question and that question, then I'll give you my life. As if I'm important enough to give God a checklist. These are my terms for surrender. No, it didn't work that way. The next 2 weeks were complete misery because the girl that you saw on the first slide, my girlfriend at the time, thinks I'm absolutely crazy. And I'm not picking up a camera. I'm not surrendering to God. So 2 weeks later, I go for a drive again because that's where I do my best thinking. And I'm going down the interstate. Now realize I'm an American, so I'm a little hard-headed. And it just took a while for it to sink in. Finally, I said, oh, I get it. You know, you reached out to me, showed me that you were real, as I've been challenging you to do. Now it's my turn to reach back. So that's what I did. I knew how to pray the prayers. I was a pastor's son. So I did. I prayed and I asked God to take control of my life. And then I get on the phone with Craig Gross, who's the founder of XXX Church. He's this guy here, over on the right. That's his rebellion, that little tattoo on his arm that you could see. He's always been raised a Christian, and his wife is the only person he's ever been with sexually, and he's a youth pastor, and so that's his, he's a rebel. He's got a tattoo. But anyway, he's a great guy, and that's, by the way, on Nightline ABC at Yale University, having a debate with the two porn stars over on the right, one of which is Ron Jeremy, and hopefully you don't recognize him. Probably most of you do, though. And I called Craig and I says, here's what I just did. Here's the prayer that I prayed. And he says, that's awesome. I'm at a pastor's conference, or I'd fly out to see you. But since I can't, we'll have a staff pastor out tomorrow. Now, this is 3,600 kilometers from their office to mine, and it didn't cost me a penny. Because once again, they're being Jesus in skin, and they know I'm going to need help. So JR gets there. JR Mann, one of their pastors, and we have this conversation. And I says, JR, I'm really, really scared. I haven't saved any money. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't mind losing everything I own. I have a lot of debt. I don't mind that. I don't mind losing the house and the boats and the cars and all these sparkly things. But it took me a really long time to get Wendy to accept money from me to support my son. I told her finally, it doesn't matter how I make a living. I'm still his father. And you've always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Let me do that for you. And so she had. And I'd been her sole means of support. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And so what happened was JR got on the newsletter that XXX Church has, and he let all the Christians that I'd always hated know what was going on. And soon there's checks arriving in Wendy's mailbox from the very people I'd always hated who are now supporting my family. And God instantly starts rewiring my mind like this. And I tell Craig, man, I think I've got everything wrong. I think my understanding of Christianity is really messed up. And I would really like to go to seminary and get on the right path again. Not because I want to be a pastor. No, I never want to do that. But because I just want to learn. And he says, I think I want to pay for it. So the Christians I'd always hated started paying for my education and my rehabilitation. This is amazing. It's blowing my mind. It's not easy. I had these days where I would cry so hard that I puked, finally cry myself to sleep, wake up the next day, and the process starts again every few hours. It was really like detox from a lifestyle. It wasn't easy, but it was so peaceful. And I started learning about a Jesus who is not looking for a reason to send me to hell all the time, but instead it's like this. How many here are parents or have watched a toddler learn to walk? All of us probably. You'll see a toddler going along and they'll stumble and they'll fall and they'll get back up and they'll stumble and fall. Do you ever see a parent say, that's the third time you've fallen today, this walking thing is not for you, you should stay down there on the floor? No, but for some reason we think that's what God does to us when we fall. But no, he doesn't. He's like that perfect parent, and he gets down on his knees and he picks us up and he tells us to walk. And then we fall and he picks us up and he tells us to walk. And we fall again. And once again, he picks us up and tells us to walk. It's amazing. And we reach out to Daddy God and we say, please help me. And he picks us back up. That's the kind of God I started to see. It was amazing. I had never encountered this kind of God. I started walking with him and feeling his presence and saying, man, I've been such a fool. But God can always use anything for his good. He can use everything for his good. This guy who was a pastor's son, who Satan was kind of jabbing him and saying, look what that pastor's son is doing now. Ha, ha, ha. And God says, just wait. Because now he's going to go and tell all my people, over 5 million so far, about what really goes on behind the scenes of porn. And we're going to help use that information to set some people free. That's absolutely amazing too, isn't it? God can use all things for good. I always wanted to be a dad. Caden was planned. He's an amazing kid. He's absolutely incredible. Every other weekend's not good enough. But that's my reality. Because there are wages to sin. I wanted to be there to help him with his homework. I wanted to be there to pick him up from school. Never wanted to miss a game. I wanted to love his mother. But I sold him out for $500,000 a year. What is it you're selling out for? Images on a screen? Videos that aren't even close to reality? Maybe porn's not your struggle. Maybe it's something else. But please know that you can always stand back up. God will always pick you back up. There's nothing that you could ever do that would make him love you any less.